I'm going to try to take less than 20 minutes and walk through this concept of redefining risk discovery with artificial intelligence. And as I sort of thanked Kirk on the way out, it's really an exciting time to be in Canada building an artificial intelligence software company. We started on this journey at Mindbridge about 7.5 years ago. And, without the help of Mila, Amy, the Vector Institute in Toronto, which are our three big AI centers of excellence, and the amazing higher education programs we've got across the country, I don't think Mindbridge would have been able to find the staff. And Kirk mentioned, this idea of, staffing and in early stage startups is really tough. And I think we owe a lot of our success to sort of that side of things, combined with how we're funded. And I'll get into that at a certain stage. So I think everyone understands this and can appreciate this, but the reality is that in terms of data, right, we continue to compound on a fairly regular frequency. I think it's about every 18 months. We more than double the amount of financial system information that's flowing through organizations and businesses. And part of that is all these new tools that people are using across their business to make things exciting and happy and wonderful for their user communities. But typically, we're not really harnessing all of that data in the most appropriate way. As you can see here, a stat from a couple of years ago, less than 0.5% of available data is used by the businesses themselves. And I would say that keeps fairly consistent, even though we keep doubling the amount of data that's available to them. And part of this is because we keep going through these sort of winters and springs. And in Canada and the Canadian ecosystem now, and around the world, this new spring, which started roughly 5 years ago, is really driving a much greater adoption of data engineering, data scientists, and AI systems coming together. And so when we think about why now, it comes to a number of factors, but a lot of it comes down to cloud capacity, right? Scaling capacity of the performance and the ability for us to leverage various models in new and innovative ways with the ability to have the technology processing. There's the individual who wrote the very first paper on stochastic outlier selection algorithm, right, from Tilburg University out in the Netherlands. If you actually looked at the amount of and volume of data that Mindbridge processes, which can be in excess of 500,000 rows, it would take multiple years for that original algorithm paper. If you did it exactly as designed, it would take multiple years for it to carry out those tasks. And so paper was written, I think, in 2006 or thereabouts. And so you can imagine in the 16 years since then, we've really been able to accelerate things. So for us to run 500,000 rows on an SOS is sort of just a regular day at Mindbridge. So I think that's quite interesting. Now, I want to take two perspectives on AI, right? The first part is that change is hard, right? So a lot of businesses actually struggle quite considerably in understanding the value, understanding what an AI system is, what it's doing, and then they get into this sort of funk. They get into this downtrodden trough of disillusionment that AI is really not going to solve things for me. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that only 30% of all transformation projects, when you look around the world, this is from Boston Consulting Group in 2020, their most recent paper on this, 70% of all transformation fails, which the invert of that is only 30% of all transformations businesses are doing are succeeding. And I think that a lot of that comes down to a couple of really key things. And so for those that are successful, right, there's one key quality that has nothing to do with technology that is making them successful. And the quality or the area where it's becoming successful or why they're successful is leadership. So one of my key sort of messages as I think about what I want to share over the next 17 minutes or so is to become a change agent and to be able to really move your organization. It needs to have strong leadership and leadership across every element of the types of individuals. And that's the way you're going to succeed. So if I switch gears slightly, what is machine learning? What is AI? I think you've already heard a lot of these concepts from some of the speakers. Obviously, Kirk and the team over at Amy, or the team over at Mila or Vector Institute. They really specialize in going deep in helping and educating teams on machine learning and AI. What's really interesting is that AI can only be successful if you start thinking about why you're using it, right? You're using it because humans, we're actually this wonderful, beautiful thing, right? We're this sentient entity that can get up every day, can decide on what their program needs to be for the day, i.e., their schedule. For those of us that travel to our offices, right? However we get there, bus, train. I took my motorcycle into the office today. There's 1,000 or more inputs that you're seeing in a 10-minute journey from point A to point B. The human brain is an unbelievable, unparalleled, thing. But why you use AI is to start reducing these, non-value added tasks that your brain can use. It's about trying to take an understanding of what the data is and let the data speak for itself. And it's about increasing the agility of the human, right? So the best AI systems, in my opinion, and probably that of many others who you've heard from or you're going to hear from, is that the human in the loop piece, and that's why leadership was a big statement for me, and I put it up in big bold letters. That's what makes AI successful. But why you do it is to start reducing all of these non-value added things in your day-to-day life. And AI is wonderful, right? It's starting to change all different types of professions. So I just have a couple of them here. I actually happen to work at IBM when we were working on the Watson oncology piece. So I know a number of those team members, who are based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and out of Texas. And it's really amazing to think that an AI system, can start partnering with a clinician in order to make those diagnoses that much faster, right? The faster you find something like cancer and you start treating cancer, the more likely you are to survive it, right? You go to the middle box. This is a team that we also know from the Mindbridge perspective. But how do you get through thousands, if not millions, of cases around the world, right, or even in your own country, to understand where some of those evidence pieces are for prior precedents? So using AI to be a paralegal to do the hunting and finding of all those documents that might help your client, with their outcome is kind of cool, right? And then finally, on the left-hand side of this, right, looking at it from how do we just help individuals, right? Insurance in many countries is quite painful, meaning it's expensive. There's a lot of challenges in getting a claim through. And so using things like process mining and other AI systems to actually improve that efficiency and reduce the chance of fraud, which ultimately reduces the burden on the insurance company, which likely means that they can offer you a better level of service at a slightly lower cost, is a really great thing for humans, right? So AI is really changing the world market. And I think the last count I had, so we've been working with the federal government of Canada, as well as some of the provincial bodies, in a number of different ways. There's actually a funding envelope called the Strategic Investment Fund, which Mindbridge is a grateful recipient of part of those fundings to build our solution. But if you think about the fact that there's roughly 550 AI startups across Canada right now, it's an amazing time to invest in being here. So let me transition a little bit to, why this matters in the thing that I do, right? So I spend all of my time, and I've spent the last 23 years, almost 24 now, really focused on analytics, focusing on how do we improve accounting, finance, and anything related to stakeholder assurance. So what I mean by that is, we've got a lot of these publicly traded businesses, we've got privately held businesses, and they all want to be more performant, right? At the end of the day, they're looking and they're trying to be guided to a great outcome. Now, what's happened historically is, 100 years ago, we found a statistical algorithm called Benford's Law. So it was finally documented. And what it essentially said is, when you look at a distribution in a ledger-based system, there is a normal sort of causal flow of the leading digits. So only so many numbers of transactions and entries should start with 1, should start with 2, should start with 3. And you can expand and extend that law to the second digit, and so on and so forth. And so for over 100 years, we've had one statistical model that has been used to identify fraud, right? And while it does a great job, not everyone has access to all the data that they need to make that happen. So how do you move forward? Well, you move forward by starting to look at the type of things that Mindbridge cares about, right? And why do we care about it? At the end of the day, what's happening in businesses today, right, is that they continue to increase in complexity. If you think of just following a piece of the business process, let's say order to cash. So let's assume that you're a SaaS startup like Mindbridge is. Everything starts from some type of top of funnel marketing engagement, right? We're reaching out to people. We're putting on webinars. We're trying to attract people into our funnel, right? And at some point, we pick it up and we put that into our CRM. And from that CRM, we then hand it off to a sales team, and then the sales team does a whole bunch of back and forth. We might do demonstrations of software. We might do presentations. We might send them documents and all of these things. At the end of the day, that trickles down to a document, which is like a proposal. And then eventually it gets into a sales order. And then from a sales order, it hits into your accounts receivable. From accounts receivable, the customer pays and it hits your cash. All of that is digitally aware now, right? 20 years ago, half that workload was very, very manual. Now everything can be digitally aware. So what do you do with all that data? I mean, that's just one process, right? So the increasing complexity of how businesses operate, transact, and flow is causing a significant amount of financial and operational risk. And unfortunately, right now, we've got all of these challenges where the data that's being used, specifically within visual analytics tools, someone has put a level of bias or a lens on it that says, we need to go look for these things. The end result is potentially huge, high negative impacts. And you could look at massive failures in the world, just calling out a few of them from around the world in the Western Europe region. You've got Carillion, which missed about a $2 billion pitfall in their balance sheet. You've got Wirecard, where there was tons of fraud that was happening in terms of the way that they were stating and overstating their revenue. You had a little organization like Patisserie Valerie, who based out of London, who their biggest issue was that they were opening accounts and not tracking them well. So they ended up in this overspend situation, which then made it harder and harder for them to get financing to continue their mission. Thomas Cook Travel, right, stranded millions of passengers around Europe, Middle East, and Africa when they went defunct after 6 months after having an audit firm say, "Yep, we're happy with the performance of this business, and we do not see a reasonable. We believe that everything they're presenting is we're reasonably sure it's free of material misstatement." I mean, these are just massive, challenges, issues, and whatnot in the business. So at the end of the day, what should we care about and what should we focus on, right? We should focus on a number of different points. One of the first points that we should focus on is an AI-based system appropriately tuned in identifying and confirming the known knowns, right? Whatever that business process is. Start with, how can I quickly reduce the amount of human effort? The second step, right, if you look at this sort of iceberg chart, right, the known unknowns, right? What is it likely that someone is going to ask a question about, and therefore, because they feel, oh, well, we may have an issue in overspending, we may have an issue where we're getting duplicate, entries, whatever it might be, right? So you want to also quickly and efficiently identify those or give them access to that data so that they can do more. And the big thing with an AI system is typically, right, to work on the unknown unknowns, right? There's so much complexity in the data. There's so many things moving in a business that sometimes it's actually just trying to move through the unknown unknowns as quickly as possible, but no one has time. So it's efficiency and it's effectiveness at the same time. So these are the types of things that, we sort of spend our time thinking about and we spend our time working through. So why is this? Well, the next generation in at least the Office of Finance and CFO, so where I spend all of my time working, right, is that they are looking at, elements of momentous change, starting to move towards blockchain ledger systems, starting to move towards, AI-based anomaly detection, AI-based statistical modeling. How is my business likely to perform? And obviously then reconciling and verifying all the data that's built in there. So this whole idea that you can bring all of this tech together was very novel, maybe 7, 8 years ago. Now it's a reality, right? And I think that that's one of the biggest things that AI starts bringing to the table is these opportunities to move things. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Mindbridge, and this isn't meant in, or intended to be sort of a promotional, like, come and spend money with us. This is what do we do specifically with our AI system, right? The first things first is we take every single bit of your ERP, your enterprise resource planning uh, structures. We look at every single entry and transaction, and we score them based on anywhere between 10 and 30 different algorithms, or what we call control points, in order to really inform the decision-making process. Why do we do that, right? We do that because we want users, right? So these are financially aware individuals, to more quickly find elements of errors, misstatements, or fraud. Why do we care about that? We care about that because if you think about anything you're investing in today personally, right? If an accountant makes a mistake and puts the decimal in the wrong space in a transaction that is, some factor of magnitude, right? Where instead of it being, 100, they type in 10,000, in terms of, cost per unit. Well, now all of a sudden it looks like the business is doing one of these nosedives where their costs are way above where their revenue is. You might lose some money. So we care about this fundamentally because we think that every business deserves, right, the ability to find these types of errors as quickly as possible. So our whole job, our mind is to reduce these elements and to live better business outcomes. So when you start thinking about, investing in AI, investing in even the Canadian market as an example, right? There are tons of businesses with all sorts of different challenges. And I think AI is a really great way to start increasing the ability to let the data speak for itself. So in our world, that means that we flow through all of these transactions, right? We give them insights that sort of prioritize where their field of focus can be, and we make sure that there are quantitative, decisions being made because you can see exactly where those issues might be. So again, like what we care about is the ability to really drive new and innovative things in the mindset of people deploying technology. And so we spend a lot of time working with a bunch of different organizations, a lot of higher education institutions here in Canada, supporting them with advisory work, working on their committees to further the advancements of the students. We actually have 100 and I think the last count I had was 145 universities around the world who are teaching elements of AI through an experience that is founded based on Mindbridge's technology. And we find that give back is really, really important to the world ecosystem, right? AI is going to significantly transform. I think Andrew Ng said it the best, right? AI is going to be probably the most significant change, just like electricity was at the beginning of the last industrial revolution, right? So prior to electricity, everything from manufacturing systems to time and time ability to work longer hours or different hours where your customers are available wasn't there, right? Now we're starting to talk about AI in the same way, where appropriately tuned, appropriately identified, and working through, you're going to be able to much more helpfully move your data through your system and really help the businesses sort of transform. So one of the other things that I would say is that our philosophy is to build a resilient system. There's a lot of different papers and different mindsets and methodology. So we know folks in, at the Vector Institute or Mila or Amy, I mean, really, we have probably the three of the grandfathers of AI in Canada, supporting our education system, supporting our AI, and each has different mindset, right? Mindbridge's mindset is build an ensemble. Don't leave it to just a deep learning model. Don't leave it just to unsupervised models. Actually think about your business problem, right? In order to deliver something that's quite unique, but also quite resilient. And in our case, that means we've got to take these old 150-year-old processes, right? Looking at the data in a slightly rule-based orientation, as well as then feed in that 100-year-old Benford law, right? You see that on the bottom left, which is a statistical model combined with machine learning. And we find that is going to be the best way for us to help our user community. So I'd also urge the participants to think about, when you're starting to invest in things that you might be building, or you're actually looking to quite literally invest in other businesses, start interrogating how AI is going to solve that problem and what types of systems they're putting in place to make it as resilient as possible, right? Because resiliency and explainability and probably at the end of the day, performance are going to be some of the biggest things that you'll have to go through. And to the point where Mindbridge has spent, we've probably spent 9 months working with an organization called Holistic AI, and they are an offshoot from University College London, which is all around doing algorithm verification and validation. So we actually spent 9 months working with a third party, and I think we are the first corporate enterprise SaaS provider, definitely within our space, but I think potentially worldwide, who's done a completely independent algorithm validation so that our users can understand and trust the explainability that we're providing them. So it's kind of hard to sort of summarize all of these pieces and why it's important, but I think it comes down to you need explainability, you need resilience, right? You need to be able to capture to the problems that they have, and you need to start being performant. And I think that over the last decade, as we've seen much more investment in cloud computing and computing at scale, you're starting to see the results of how AI can be that much more important. I'm really looking forward to the next sort of 7 to 10 years as quantum computing comes to a reality for more than the average, more than the mega users or mega institutions, because I think that puts performance on a totally different level. But being able to, build, AI to run, I mean, just look at the numbers there, right? 250 quadrillion relationships for one of our individual control points that we use. The human brain, although can figure all that out, just think about the time and energy it would take that human to do it, and whether they can do it flawlessly, routine, without sleep, without food, without all these things. And these are the types of reasons why AI is really important. So, our goal is to start presenting ways for you to think about how to build your opportunity. And for us, that comes down to making sure that we create an experience that sort of really pinpoints all of the things when it comes to financial data and looking for those true anomalies. So whatever that looks like for you, start thinking about it in that lens. We've got to make impact. We know that without leadership, we're not going to land the change. We know that compute power is there, but it means we've got to think about how resiliently we can build this thing, and then obviously make sure that you're actually driving home to an end point. So Mindbridge is all about sharing, its love across the organizations we work with and across, as far-reaching data sets as we possibly can. So this is our mission. This is what we do, and I'm really excited that we've spent the last, sort of 7.5 years getting from that point that Kirk talked about, where we were having a hard time finding data scientists. We were having a hard time sort of getting organized to build an AI system, to being, one of the world's leading, providers in this space and for us. So we're really excited to see that TRAI is going forward with all these great sessions, right? It's been a blessing to work with the team to really start giving you more context, more ideas, and really start shaping, next generation of teams investing, either here in Canada or in home country in Turkey, and maybe start building more collaboration across the others. So my last point is going to be, right, AI isn't going to replace, in my space, auditors, but auditors that use AI will replace those that are not using it, right? And I think that is the fundamental mission that we are on, to put the human in the loop and give them time, energy, and flexibility back so that they can really understand what they're doing. So I think that almost puts me right at 20 minutes, Betul. I hope it does. If anyone does have any questions, right, feel free to email me. I'm very available. It's a really simple email address. It's my first initial, my last initial, the first initial for my last name at mindbridge.ai. So really easy to find. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully, we see where the future takes us. So thank you very much. Have a great day.